The year 2023 witnessed remarkable alterations in the cinematic landscape. There has been a varied slew of quality works. Ambitious projects by renowned auteurs became online trends. Attention to international films grew much stronger, and interest in the superhero genre took a sudden fall. In this video, I will list the top 15 movies of 2023 according to my personal opinion. Why 15 instead of 10? Well, because there are 15 movies from last year that I thought were great. I see no reason why I have to limit myself to 10. I do realize that I'm a bit late for the party, but instead of racing to get the list out as soon as the year ends, I prefer to hold off on these lists until I've seen the majority of the movies I was anticipating. Especially since where I live, I often have to wait a long time before I can catch certain movies. And even still, I haven't watched every single thing that came out last year because that's impossible. And please remember that the goal of these lists isn't the validation of any opinion, meaning the inclusion or absence of certain movies shouldn't upset anyone. These are just my personal picks that I'm sharing to celebrate the works of art that I appreciated and connected to, and to bring attention to what you might have missed. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. At number 15 we have The Peasants, a Polish animated drama set in the countryside on the cusp of the 19th and 20th centuries. It tells the story of a young woman who has her youth snatched from her by being forced into an arranged marriage. When her attempts to break free become the subject of gossip, she finds herself at odds with the village community and their deep-rooted traditions.
Patrzcie ją, dziedziczkę. Pierwszą gospodynią w Lipcach została, a siedzi kej ten mruk.
This is a visual treat. It's basically an animated oil painting. Directors DK and Hugh Welchman filmed the movie on camera and then rotoscoped each shot. The same technique they used for their previous work, Loving Vincent, but the final look is even more impressively detailed here, and it was complemented by a memorable musical score. The story doesn't break any new ground, it mostly feels familiar, and some of the subplots are underdeveloped. In particular, there's a scuffle at one point that comes out of nowhere, causing the movie to sag in the middle. But it eventually reaches a powerful conclusion, and the beautiful images and dazzling colors seeping from the screen were more than enough to hold my attention for the entire runtime.
Tyś jest dla mnie jak ta ziemia święta, co wszystko do życia budzi. Tak tyś mnie do życia obudził.
At number 14 we have When Evil Lurks, an Argentinian horror movie set in a rural town where two brothers encounter a possessed man on the verge of spawning evil itself. Through a series of unfortunate events, a demonic pandemic erupts in town, leading to catastrophic consequences.
La maldad sabe más de sus miedos que usted.
I rarely feel the need to look away during a horror movie, but I did a couple of times with this one. This is easily the most gruesome movie I saw last year. Writer-director Damian Rugna pulled no punches here. Every worst-case scenario you can think of during any given scene is likely to happen and to be presented explicitly. But it's not just the graphic imagery that leaves an impact. The story has an apocalyptic quality to it. There's an unending sense of dread, as if the town is being swallowed by a black hole of hopelessness that only gets deeper as the movie progresses. My main complaint that kept the movie from getting a higher spot on the list is the stupidity of some of the characters. I know that misjudgments and self-destructive impulses are parts of the movie's theme, but it occasionally extends to a point of absurdity that pulled me out a few times. Other than that, this is quite the treat for horror fans and a very thrilling watch for movie fans in general. At number 13 we have The Holdovers, a comedy drama that takes place in 1970 and follows a seemingly inflexible history teacher at an all-male boarding school, who gets dragged into a babysitting job as the supervisor for students who, for one reason or another, can't return home over the Christmas holiday.
I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
This movie feels nostalgic both in its story and presentation. It has a distinct textural look. It almost feels like an old movie that has been rediscovered and restored. Writer-director Alexander Payne always sets his stories against a unique backdrop. In this case, 1970s Christmas feels incredibly vibrant and lived in. His movies often present ostensibly two-dimensional characters who find themselves on a soul-searching journey through which they discover another deeper dimension. One major issue that I have is that the final conflict felt manufactured to me, like the script was insisting on something to happen. But that didn't keep me from losing myself in this cozy and comforting depiction of Christmas and the 70s, of bonding and finding ourselves in those around us.
Do you think I want to be babysitting you? Oh, no, I was praying to the God I don't even believe in that your mother would pick up the phone or your father would arrive in a helicopter or a submarine or a flying fucking saucer to take you
dead.
At number 12 we have Red Rooms, a Canadian crime mystery that centers around a successful fashion model who develops a morbid obsession with a high-profile serial killer case that gradually pulls reality and her dark fantasies closer together.
Les vidéos du début du dossier, je les ai visionnées. Je les ai plus jamais revues. Une fois, c'était suffisant.
The defendant we see inside the glass box is cold and silent with a strange aura that triggers apprehension. And yet, he's not always the most unsettling person in the courtroom. Our main character, brilliantly portrayed by Juliette Guerriepi, managed to be even more puzzling and uncomfortable to watch at times. Her unpredictability and murky motivations are made only worse by her unhealthy addiction to online activities, which the movie alludes to with an interesting reference to Arthurian legend. Despite the dark subject matter, writer-director Pascal Plante refrained from showing any graphic or distasteful imagery. Instead, he smartly utilized his troubled main character, along with some very disturbing sounds and a haunting musical score to imply the horror.
J'en profite, j'ai un petit mot à dire à ces groupies. Celles sur les forums en ligne, celles qui lui envoient des lettres d'amour, puis surtout celles qui hantent la salle d'audience à chaque jour. Ben, on vous voit. Puis vous êtes obscènes. Obscènes.
At number 11 we have Reality, a fictional movie bordering on being a docudrama that recounts the FBI's interrogation of the 25-year-old former National Security Agency contractor, Reality Winner, concerning an unauthorized release of classified information.
Okay, well, the reason we're here today is that we have a search warrant for your house. Do you know what this might be about?
I have no idea.
Okay.
This is the feature debut of writer-director Tina Satter. It is adapted from a stage play based on Reality's FBI interview, from which the dialogue was pulled word for word. Tina Satter was able to build tension through mundane conversations. The characters are quite courteous with one another given the circumstances, but there is this underlying unease that occasionally leaks through their facial expressions or body language. Characters are constantly moving and searching in the background. Reality might lean a bit to check on her dog, and it's like a jump scare to everyone around her. This state of unrest is carried throughout the 87-minute runtime by the nuanced performances of the cast members, in the forefront of whom is Sydney Sweeney, who was giving a performance within a performance, as her character seems to be hiding something or repressing an emotion at all times. It's a riveting and layered acting piece that I think deserves way more recognition than what it got.
All right, we could just step over, just here. Yep, just stop right there. Look, I'm here.
Number 10 is Killers of the Flower Moon, a crime drama that tells the real story of the Osage Nation, a Midwestern Native American tribe whose sudden wealth upon discovering large oil resources on their reservation around the turn of the century invites a pack of wolves disguised in sheep's clothing. Soon after, a series of suspicious deaths shakes the might of this nation.
Evil surrounds my heart. Many times I cry, and this evil around my heart comes out of my eyes.
This is an epic, poignant drama from the master who's showing no sign of slowing down past his 80s. Martin Scorsese sheds light on a dark period of American history with a story that evokes anger and compassion. The story is predominantly told through the perpetrator's perspectives, a decision that became the center of most criticisms of the movie. I can definitely see the story being told from the Osage tribe's point of view. It would have made for a completely different movie, but that doesn't undermine the insight that Scorsese brings with this version of the story. Presenting the events from this angle blew the lid off a frightening and disturbing brand of evil, one that is normalized and passionately argued for by the perpetrators. Another movie on this list did something similar with an even narrower point of view. For a nearly 3.5-hour runtime, the movie flies by. The last hour, which mainly focused on the investigation stage, could have been a bit tighter. But the movie eventually sticks the landing with its final couple of scenes that wrap up the story with a sense of desperate longing for justice or mere closure. At number 9, we have Blackberry, a Canadian biography that recounts the creation of the Blackberry brand of smartphones. It focuses on the expansion of the company's clout, driven by pioneering minds and desperate ambitions that eventually dwindled under the ever-emerging ruthless competition.
What the fuck is that? Oh, it's called a carrier wave. The calling modem is leaving.
This is one of the most overlooked movies of the year, despite the fact that I've yet to hear from someone who saw it and didn't like it. Writer-director Matt Johnson was able to balance his comedic sensibilities with some pretty intense and uncomfortable parts, thereby creating an exceptional biopic that plays up the exhilaration of success while drawing attention to the downside of reckless tenacity. The acting is solid throughout, the pacing is perfect, and the movie has a unique score by Matt Johnson's longtime collaborator Jay McCarroll, which was constructed around dial tones and dial-up modem sounds. This is all around a very well-made movie that deserves to be on everyone's radar.
Do you not ever wonder why these guys are willing to work 80 hours a week, never see their families, never get any credit?
Yeah, it's because they get to work on the best phone in the world, dog.
At number 8, we have Beau is Afraid, a surreal tragic comedy that follows an anxiety-ridden man as he embarks on a grand journey through a war-zone-like neighborhood, a seemingly gracious residence, and an otherworldly village. The goal of the journey is to reach his mother's house in time.
What? What does this mean?
The world in which this movie takes place is not subject to logic. It has its own set of rules that are governed by symbolism and by the inner workings of its main character's mind. Writer-director Ari Aster delivers a sensory experience that explores the depths of the human psyche through a host of odd and quirky characters coupled with some unforgettable and brilliantly composed imagery and a great, albeit twisted, sense of humor. Joaquin Phoenix as Beau gives a superb performance that embodies the psychological struggle of the character and perfectly encapsulates the themes of the movie. And the same can really be said about most of the supporting cast. If you've watched the movie and were confused by or didn't connect with it, then check out the full analysis video I made a while back where I did my best to explain every plot point and decipher all the hidden details. At number 7 we have Society of the Snow, a Spanish survival drama based on the true story of the Uruguayan rugby team members who, following a catastrophic plane crash, found themselves stranded in a hostile environment in the heart of the Andes Mountains beyond the reach of human aid.
Ya van 6 días sin comer. Anoche repartimos lo último que nos quedaba. Un paquete de galletitas. Ya no hay más.
This is the second adaptation of this story, the first being 1993's Alive starring Ethan Hawke. And having watched both movies, I can confidently say that Society of the Snow is the definitive version. It's bolder, less cheesy, and exudes authenticity realized through the choice to shoot on location, some very convincing makeup and special effects, and excellent performances across the board. Director Juan Antonio Bayona captured this incident in all its stomach-turning details, but at no point did I feel that he was being disrespectful toward either the victims or survivors. He did such an excellent job portraying the desperation and dire circumstances closing around those people that what we perceive as shocking, dreadful acts end up being necessary and even rational survival measures. This was a grueling and visceral experience that induced in me a feeling of revulsion towards flying, cold weather, and meat.
Esto es un cementerio. Yo no me voy a quedar acá.
At number 6 we have Past Lives, a drama romance that centers on two affectionate childhood friends who drift apart when one of their families immigrates from South Korea. 20 years later, they decide to reunite in pursuit of the possibility of filling the voids they left in each other's lives.
I was just thinking about what a good story this is.
The story of Hesong and me?
Yeah.
This is a very impressive feature debut by writer-director Celine Song. She exhibits warm sincerity in her script and calm confidence in her direction, effortlessly capturing places and times and projecting them onto the main characters. One of my favorite aspects of the movie is that it wisely doesn't vilify any of these characters. There are no points where I was wishing happiness for two of them at the expense of the third. They're all quite likable and relatable, and watching them gather and interact gave me poignant longing for the lives I could have lived.
If two strangers even walk by each other in the street, and their clothes accidentally brush, it means there must have been something between them in their past lives.
At number 5 we have Four Daughters, a Tunisian documentary that chronicles the hardships of Ulfa, a mother of 4 daughters, 2 of whom were lost. To fill in their absence, writer-director Kauthar bin Haniya hired 3 professional actresses. 2 played the lost daughters, and 1 was a stand-in for the mother for when things got too emotionally upsetting.
هما كانوا كيفكم هكاك. جربوا كيفكم وعجبتهم تصويرتهم هكاك علاش لبسوا.
This is a unique approach to documenting a real tragedy that may initially sound a bit exploitative, but as the movie slowly lifts the veil on this family's misfortune, we realize that by reenacting and reliving different stages of their lives, the 3 remaining family members were able to tell and direct their own story while coping and filling in the puzzle pieces that paved the way for the ensuing tragedy. The result is an honest and thorough exploration of tradition, sexism, radicalization, and liberation, expertly put together in this meta-documentary drama hybrid that will leave you both heartbroken and optimistic.
عليه؟ أنا صغاري
بلا بخير. صغاري مش عايشين مع أبوهم. لا مستمتعين بفلوسهم لا بحنانه لا بقاعته ولا يهز المكتب لا حتى شيء.
Number 4 is About Dry Grasses, a Turkish movie that follows an art teacher in the middle of compulsory service in an isolated village in Anatolia, where his hopes and dreams for a more cultural and more opportune life are shaken by an allegation of inappropriate contact with 2 students and an encounter with a rhetorical colleague.
Ya bir insanın ister yüce bir amaç, bir ideal, bir dava uğruna olsun, isterse de başka bir sebeple. Hatta beyni yıkanarak bile olsun. Kendini feda edebilme cesareti gösterebilmesinin hiç mi önemi yok peki?
As with the majority of Nuri Bilge Ceylan's works, you can almost breathe the atmosphere in this beautiful and uncomfortable portrait of social archetypes and selfish dissatisfaction. The central figure of the movie is both captivating and unnerving. His 2 conflicting sides mirror the movie's setting, the cold, oppressive outdoors and the cozy, lived-in indoors, both of which are captured in mesmerizing shots that linger long enough for the scenery to be absorbed and the emotions to marinate. On that note, I should probably mention that Ceylan's movies, including this one, are categorized as slow cinema. This is not a reason for anyone to avoid them, but it's better to go in with that insight. That being said, I find this to be one of his more accessible works, so don't feel too intimidated by its categorization. And consider that this is a movie for which Christopher Nolan's quote, "Don't try to understand it, feel it," is actually applicable. You don't need to constantly follow the chatter or dissect the nuances of the movie. Just sit back and give in to its hypnosis.
Hiçbirinizin ileride ressam olacağı yok. Biliyoruz bunu. Sizler patates, şeker pancarı ekeceksiniz ki ne olacak? Zenginler rahat yaşayacak.
At number 3 we have Poor Things, a sci-fi comedy that centers around Bella Baxter, a young woman brought back from the dead by a brilliant surgeon whose experiments are questionable to say the least. We follow her as she discovers the world and goes through different stages of womanhood, unshackled by societal norms.
Madam Swiney, I have examined my situation. I need sex and money.
In the vein of his previous works, director Yorgos Lanthimos unmasks cultural traditions and practices by presenting a warped version of reality that stretches the absurdity past the point of believability. And yet, the worlds he creates feel strangely existent and animate, thanks to his explicit vision and technical brilliance. In Poor Things, Lanthimos presents the evolution of a woman, perfectly navigated by Emma Stone's incredibly bold performance. And through this evolution, the movie puts on full display the many variations of men's tendencies to control women. There has been some controversy surrounding the premise of the story, because the main character engages in many sexual acts while basically having the brain of a child. I personally reject this controversy because that's clearly not the point of the movie, and obviously we don't see a child engaging in these acts. We see an adult woman in a fantastical scenario where she gets a newborn brain that develops at an abnormal rate. I don't really find that problematic. On the contrary, I think this is a safe way to explore problematic acts like grooming, cradle snatching, and infantilization without any form of exploitation.
You're definitely unique, Bella, in all ways, but this improvement through philosophy is people trying to run away from the fact that we are all cruel beasts, born that way, die that way.
At number 2 we have The Zone of Interest, a historical drama adapted from a novel of the same title, which presents the mundane day-to-day life of a German SS officer and his family as they relish in their dream living space in the shadow of smoke rising from the most infamous concentration camp in 1943's Poland. This is a movie that has to be heard as much as seen. Through his extensive research and precise vision, writer-director Jonathan Glazer created a naturalistic setting in the foreground, captured by flat, apathetic shots of the Huss family's mundane daily activities, and juxtaposed it with a hellish setting in the background, expressed by gunshot echoes and harrowing screams. The result is an experimental work of art that aims for identification. It identifies the perpetrators as human beings, not demons or evil caricatures, just humans. And that is what makes it so haunting, because it's a harsh reminder that humans are capable of committing such atrocities and of normalizing them simply by going on with their daily lives that aren't drastically different from our own. A message that hits even harder once we start reflecting on how we choose to brush off things that might agitate our daily routines. Once we realize that we are kind of living in our versions of the zone.
Wenn ich wollte, würde mein Mann deine Asche sofort über den Feldern von Babice verstreuen.
And my number 1 movie of the year is My Icy Anatomy of a Fall. This is a French crime drama about a woman suspected of murder following her husband's death. An incident shrouded in layers of mystery, with the only potential witness being their partially blind son.
J'ai juste transposé ce que vous m'avez dit en dialogue direct.
Mais j'ai pas dit ça dans cette langue.
Le plus important là, c'est le niveau sonore, alors le français c'est plus simple pour tout le monde.
On its surface, this is a courtroom drama, a pretty good one at that. But as the story unfolds and manifests its profundity, we begin to realize that writer-director Justine Triet isn't interested in revealing the truth as much as calling into question people's interpretations of the truth. Almost every character is attempting to hijack the narrative and twist it into something that suits their biases. Police and investigators create different versions of the incident, partially based on theories. A psychiatrist steers his testimony away from any possible failure of his towards a patient, and an ex-lover bases his case on the supposed depression and instability of the husband. By extension, we, the audience members, are intentionally led by the script to reach certain conclusions despite a lack of solid proof, thereby becoming a part of this speculative judgment. I also think that the choice to have the only witness be visually impaired is nothing short of genius. It not only added to the mystery of the incident, but it also mirrors what the statue of Lady Justice represents, an unbiased judgment expressed through the symbolic blindfold. All of that, in addition to the impeccable execution and stellar performances by everyone, including the child and the dog, cemented this as my #1 movie of the year.
Now, looking for a stranger who walks in, kills him while you were sleeping right above and Daniel was out for a walk is a shitty strategy. Samuel had no enemies.
Stop. I did not kill him.
That's not the point.
So there you have it, my list of the best movies of 2023. What did you think of it, and which entries have caught your interest? Let me know in the comments below, and feel free to share your own personal lists. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And I'll see you next time.